refrigerator in the bathroom so you can drink beer while you're showering. Silly.
Yes, it is quite. Ooh, is it time?
It is 15 seconds late.
Oh no.
That will never get done.
Well, hello. Yes, we cannot. Uh, Good evening, everyone. This is Email Core first session of the week. I think I will be co-chairless today. Todd sent apologies. He has some medical procedure thing. So let's get started. I hope everybody here. In fact, I'm not going to quiz you whether you know Note well, but I'm pretty sure that everybody here have been to at least one more session this week. So I kind of recognize you all. So hopefully I can skip that. You cannot come to the mic then. So, but just as a reminder, I don't know whether this will or will not get heated. I hope it wouldn't. I very much expect the discussion to stay professional. So, yeah, please use reasoned arguments. Don't attack a person. Attack the arguments if you like. Be nice to each other. We're all friends. We have beers. Right. We have note takers. Thank you, Arndt and Ken, helping out. So thank you for that. Basically, there were about probably around 20 tickets created in the last 2 weeks. I didn't think it was useful to put them on the slides. We'll just go through them one by one. Today, we are going to concentrate on SMTP base. Friday, we'll do a SMTP base, and then we'll do AS at the end. Yeah, as a reminder, we have one session today, and then we're having at least 1 hour session on Friday. We might use a bit more, I think. So, working group status. Email format is still done as far as I'm concerned. Then we have SMTP went through IETF last call, initially got absolutely 0 comments, and then suddenly massive SecDir and DNSDir reviews, which generated various discussions and some tickets, which we are going to talk about today. AS got updated mostly from with the text as discussed last IETF. But some of the discussions, we might choose not to put some text in AS as opposed to SMTP. So I suppose we'll find out. So I'm going to warm you up a little bit by asking easy questions. At the top of each ticket, I put my estimated easiness level. Don't prove me wrong. So, one of this, so Donald Eastlake did quite a good review of, SecDir review of our document. He was unclear about what is the required destination mailbox. Is required to be supposed to be all in uppercase. The way I interpreted this is because in mail from the mailbox is optional. this was a counterpoint to say, actually, here it is required. And it's not using uppercase word because it's just so. My suggestion is no change, but I just realized we don't have John in this discussion at all. That is going to be a very quick session without him. Yes, that will be so. John actually said that he might have an alternative text to clarify this. I honestly don't mind if John can come up with something which is slightly clearer. I think that's fine. So if people is okay with either no change or John will propose a tweak, then that's fine. Okay. Oh, John is here. Hi, John. John, do you want to? I think I just relayed your private comments about this, that you might, even though I suggested no change, that you might propose some alternative text. Do you want to talk about this?
My apologies for being late. I lost track of the time. I don't think so. My general instinct about these things is to, as many of us have suggested over the months, to leave things alone unless a fix is a clear improvement and and there's or there's evidence of harm caused by the previous language. I just don't know that's useful to tamper at this point. In case I haven't made it clear on the list, I'm really the servant of the working group in this. So whatever the working group decides, I'll do. But I don't see a lot of point in wasting time on something like this.
Okay. I think what I was telling people just before you came is I just have a couple of easy tickets to warm us up to the more difficult stuff. That's why I didn't put all the easy stuff up front. There is a lot of it on Friday, but this is just kind of get us into the happy mood.
Okay.
Okay. Fine.
Works for me.
All right. So either no change or if you propose alternative that people are happy with, that's fine. I think people are fine either way. Okay, next one. So basically about there is some text in the document to make sure that 821 is not listed as internet standards after this is done. And the proposal is our esteemed area director will just deal with this. So
football received.
Okay, fine. Yeah, I don't think it's worth spending lots of time about what the document says, because you just will just make sure that this is actioned after ISG review, and then document is updated to whatever was actioned or whatever, or just taken out. So
yeah, the only reason I put this into in the document was I wanted to make certain it happened. And
absolutely,
and unless Murray stands up and says, no, I don't want anything to do with this, you got to put it in the document, then I think this should be gone.
Okay. Yeah, I have no problem with striking this, even if it results in no change to the document or minor change to the document. Right. Now, coming up to a couple of slightly more moderately difficult issues is there were a couple of issues related to CNAMEs, in particular CNAME chains. And this is the first ticket proposing specific textual change as Ted Lemon discussed with Victor Duhovny. Does this look right to people? John?
Yeah, I think there are two things we can do. This is okay. Basically, we note that it always said don't use a C name, and say, well, but actually people do use C names. I think if we'd noticed this earlier, I would have suggested simply taking the C name restriction out because nobody enforces it. But I don't want to do that now, so I think we can put this in and close it.
Okay. And from Victor's email, there was, I think, just about around 1% of domains using it, and this seems to work. So basically, that's kind of improving in Trop. Okay. I can never tell with you people. You know, I just. As I said earlier, don't prove me wrong. You know, I will. Okay, well, okay. I'm happy so far. My happiness indicator is good so far. Right. The next, again, it's different part of the document talking about listing various RR records. And so I think John Clancy has agreed that the text was slightly confusing. Yes, but the question is the proposed change actually, is it factually correct? Does it change a meaning from the intended or not? So I'm seeing some thumb up from Ken and Barry, and nodding from Pete, maybe, I don't know. Okay, if people think this is correct, then let's make it so in the document. Okay. Ooh. Right. I said I will set a timer to 10 minutes, but you said you saved 5 minutes so far. So maybe I'll make it like I don't want to spend all of the remaining time on this, but maybe we'll have 20 minutes. Yeah. I might. Okay. So I'll look, if we resolve this much quicker. Let me just read a bit from the slide and set the scene, and then there was a general comment raised that what is our threat model and why don't we talk about authenticity of email and privacy and various other things. So as a chair, I think we have probably 95% of the text in AS about these topics. There are some minor issues that probably worth doing to the SMTP itself, where the wording, can be changed a little bit on some of these. But I think we have text in AS. The question in front of us is, do we want to move it or some of it? There was a proposal in last call from Eric Riscorla saying that In particular, things like TLS is important enough that you have to have a normative reference somewhere. So either you have normative requirements in this document or normatively point to another document that has this description. I'm just relaying his comment. I'm not making judgment, again. So this is up for discussion. And then if people really insist and they want to make sure that at least one of email core documents talk about this, procedurally we can do is we can wait until AS is complete and then send AS through IETF last call and send SMTP and AS to ISG at the same time. So people will know that, we're not just saying that, oh, we'll write some text for you in the future, but there is some text and it's already referenced. Some of it, I think we need a guidance from ISG about, do we have to have a normative reference to AS? Can we get away without it? How people feel about this? That's why I would like to have some guidance from our area director in ISG. But also this discussion, we might actually go somewhere completely different. So let's have a discussion. Barry.
This is Barry Leba. First, I should say, I think we should end this discussion with Murray having the last word. I did not interpret Ecker's comments as we have to have a normative reference banging on the table. I mean, so.
What he said, the transitive enclosure of all normative requirements has to talk about this.
So, all right. Well, let me just continue where
Okay, all right.
The way I interpret the discussion is that there are people who think we need to say something about this stuff, and I agree with that. I have a lot of sympathy for what Dave and John have said, that it doesn't belong as normative stuff in this document. This is a protocol that does not involve this. I understand the complexities that John Clenson in particular was talking about that makes it non-trivial. But I think we can say a relatively little bit in the security considerations and push it off to the AS with an informative reference. And what I would like to do is say that we should say there are a lot of security issues involved here, and there are extensions already in place extensions and other protocols already in place that handle this. You need to go look at those. And the details of that are being developed into an applicability statement that will appear later. And have an informative reference to the applicability statement and possibly to the Start TLS extension and whatever else we feel like we ought to have. But I think they can all be informative references and still get the point across that security is a big issue here. And if you're going to run this stuff on a modern internet, you need to pay attention to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Pete?
Pretty much reinforcing Barry. I spoke to Paul Wouters early this week. We chatted a bit about this. A normative statement in this document, a la a must, he did not seem all that committed to. But I agree with Barry saying something like the base protocol here sends text in the clear. That is a security consideration. There are extensions to deal with it. And those extensions should be used when appropriate. The whole normative reference thing, just if this is pushed for and it's an absolute showstopper, holding my nose and having a down reference, I can live with. Holding up this document to get the AS to full standard doesn't make me happy.
No, and luckily, I don't think anybody proposed that, even though
I
Maybe
think
some people haven't thought about this
Right.
specific aspect of it. Yes.
so if there is a normative reference to the down ref, I think it's dumb. I don't think it's a good practice, but I can live with that outcome.
Right. If we have to, so be it. Kind
If
of.
we have to, so be it. All that means is holding up the publication of 5321 until the AS is done. But I think that was going to happen anyway. We were going to publish them as a trio.
Yes. Yeah.
So if we can avoid it, if people are not so committed to it, great. If not, put in a line that says what's going on, put in the reference and be done.
What's the down ref?
Because
yeah,
it's
yes,
from internet standard to
okay.
proposed standard. No. It's just because of the level of the document. So yeah, this is something that is a very obscure IETF process because it's so rarely, well, yeah. Okay, John.
Okay, this may come as a surprise, but I don't think Barry and Pete and I are very far apart. I have a concern and a question.
Okay.
The concern is that if we get closer to Pete's language about this is an issue and you should go look over there, then I am much happier than if we start calling out particular extensions or particular tools. I don't want to go down the path, and I'm sorry Dave Crocker isn't here to say this differently and more loudly, but I don't want to start going down the path of referencing particular extensions in this document as something you want to do, whether that's normative or informative. So that's the first comment. The second comment is that there is already text in the introductory material to 5321 bis pointing to the AS. And one of the ways of doing this would be to strengthen that material, put some words in there about security implications, some words in there about anything anybody else that's we're putting the AS as a comment, and then reference that in the security considerations section rather than making it a big deal. And that's more or less an editorial comment, although it would have the advantage of our not making this entirely about security, which it isn't. We really need to have people who are interested in extensions and their relative properties and when one should use one thing or another or any of those other things to go look at the AS rather than trying to mash this stuff into SMTP. And I'll do whatever I'm told, but my instinct, despite this particular set of outbursts, is to not try to make this entirely about security. Same time, I can tune the text in the introduction, put the text in the security considerations section as Barry and Pete, and implicitly Donald and Paul have suggested. I won't lose a lot of sleep about that. I may do some nose holding, but I won't lose any sleep over it.
Okay, sounds good so far. Tero?
I've been going back and forth, think about what a bit different opinions because people have been giving very good points on this, and I think myself, I would actually probably want to refer or actually mention the security mechanisms in security consideration of this draft. That's what we usually do when we have some document that requires IPsec or SSH or whatever. For the security, they say that yes, the encryption is handled by IPsec. Here is a informative reference to whatever document that is, or TLS or whatever. So whoever is implementing this, I don't think there's probably that many people who are actually implementing from the scratch, but when they see that and they need, okay, I probably need to go check those documents. Having reference to application statement if that would be a normative, that's probably solving the same problem because it would be mentioned there. But of course, I think it would be much easier to just actually list out. And we don't have to say that there you should do this, you should do that. We just say, okay, security is handled by these extensions. And that's it. You just mentioning them there, so somebody can actually see that, find out that, okay, these are the things that actually, if I care about security, I should go and read them.
Okay. Just because this generated so much heat on the mailing list, can I ask you to suggest some text? Because if you suggest some text and, instead of saying, oh, no, we'll never do this, it's much, if you suggest some text and people either can tweak it or just happy with it, then it will short circuit lots of. Thank you. Jim.
Hi, Jim Fenton. This is a little bit orthogonal to the discussion about where does the text belong. But since we're talking about security considerations here, I was going to try and make this comment on the list, but the discussion blew up and I couldn't figure out where to hang my comment. So, and that happens to me a lot. In addition to Start TLS, there's also the issue that Start TLS doesn't handle a lot of situations like intermediaries that block the Start TLS keyword. And there's some firewalls that do that. There's some nations that do that. So we've got MTA STS, and we've got require TLS, although nobody's deployed require TLS. But I think it's worth mentioning something about that characteristic as well, that Start TLS by itself isn't always sufficient.
Yes, and I believe AS has this text, or should have something very similar to that. And okay, well, how about we'll double check that. I'm pretty sure there is something about that, but okay. Hold this thought, but hold it for, we'll make sure to follow up on this. Pete?
Just wanted to mention one thing where John and I might disagree, and maybe Dave and John and I might disagree. Remember in 5322 BIS, there are a couple of places where it says things like, this document does not do things with 8-bit characters or UTF-8 or anything else. You want to do that, go look over here, informative reference. And refers to MIME and refers to, other mechanisms. I don't think that's such a big deal to add to the security considerations, particularly if that makes people happier. I don't know that that's going to actually make people happier, but I don't think we should take that off the table if a reference to Start TLS or a reference to TLS in general, something else would solve this problem for folks. I think we should go ahead and do it.
My feeling from reading the mailing list that it might. Again, I cannot be 100% sure, but I suspect it might make some people happier. Okay. Ken?
Not wanting to step on the chair's toes and declare consensus here, but it's sounding to me like we are going to pitch this to the AS. So I just want to remind folks that there is a large chunk of text in the AS, mostly written by Todd, that was signed off on one of the issues a while back. But I encourage people to go read that and make sure that they feel that's whatever's in there now is substantive enough.
Yeah. Okay. Barry,
I'm
do you want to go last after John's word, or I'm just asking?
I mean, I could. I have actually. Let me just do this
Okay.
input to.
Okay. All right.
First of all, I'm disappointed that I haven't found a way to work. It's worse than you think into the conversation yet. We access Start TLS through an extension, right?
Yes.
But this is the base protocol. So even if we say that's mandatory, it's not part of this, right? It's something else. So if we were to bring a mandatory extension, say, ESMTP is the extension mechanism. If we're going to say you have to, if this extension is mandatory, then we should drag the whole thing 3207 into this as well. I don't think anybody wants to do that.
So I'm inclined to agree with Barry and just say it belongs, the reference and the material that describes it belongs in the AS. We refer to it. I'll take care of the downref. I'm saying I like what I'm hearing so far.
Okay. John?
Yeah, the comments Jim made are my other concern about mentioning Start TLS here. And I said this in different forms of the list, which is that if we say need to use Start TLS, then we need to just put that in with a should and need to discuss the situations which Start TLS doesn't work and what the alternatives are, and we go rat hole visiting it at fairly high speed, and that's again an argument for putting this into the AS, for looking carefully at the AS after we get through making this move, and inform the discussion last call, and see if that needs some tuning. My suspicion is that it does, but I want to get as close as we can to, there's important issues here, and this document doesn't cover them, and go look there. And Pete's most recent comment, modulo that concern about mentioning specific extensions as if they are the universal solution to some particular piece of the problem. I'm open to text.
Okay, thank you, John. Barry?
This is Barry Lieba. In response to Ken, just a quick statement that it would be good then, given what Ken said about the state of the AS and what text is in there or isn't, and whether that will make people happy or not, we should be requesting an early review of that tout suite.
Sure. Well, not before we think it's ready, but yes, early-ish probably is a good idea. Yes.
It would not be a bad thing to request an early sector review of the AS relatively now, to say what is not in here that you need to have in here as we wrap it up.
Okay. I think I know we haven't actually discussed specific text, but I think we have a rough consensus that I think informative. We might mention TLS. We need some specific text, but references will be informative, and we'll make sure that AS has the totality of comments that of considerations that I think people are raised.
People can post whatever they believe would be reasonable text and reasonable places to put it. I can try having some alternatives ready for before tomorrow's meeting.
That would be great. And also, I think I like the idea of your text. Well, I haven't seen it yet, but some text in the introduction talking about upfront that AS will talk about these sort of issues, and a quick note in security considerations about this. That would be great.
There's already text there, but given this discussion, probably needs some elaboration. And again, that would be part of my agenda.
Thank you. That sounds good so far. Yeah, I suspect once we have this round of changes, there might be some residual remaining issues on these tickets, but I think we'll get to them once we get to them. Okay. You're such a nice bunch today, aren't you? Okay, so I wasn't sure whether we'll get to this one. This one is, it might be a very simple change or no change. The text in the document correctly explain why unauthenticated turn is a problem. But at the same time, it says should not use unless authenticated. I think people have asked why it should not and not must not, because unless authenticated already gives you a way of, if it is authenticated, then it can be used. In addition to this, there is a document on-demand mail relay, which is saying that you can use turn, but you have to use auth command with this. So it kind of addressed the can authenticate part. I don't know how much it's used or whether it's used. There is eTurn proposal. Yes, so proposal on the slide is from me personally, not as a chair, as individual. I just put it there so that you can either shout and say that that's completely unacceptable or not. Okay, John Clancy, the one first in the queue.
My instinct remains to leave this alone. And if anybody wants to use turn or instantiate turn in a procedure, or has a demonstrated need for turn in a particular environment, that we then go write a document which fixes this. I've specifically suggested that we might have a conversation with some of the people worried about delay tolerant networking or interplanetary networking or really strange places on the Earth networking, and see if we can actually see if there's any interest in getting that document moving. But if there's no such interest, that's ultimately an argument for not messing with this. Now, if we're going to get a demand from the security area to start writing security considerations for turn, in spite of the fact that this is an appendix and say should not and what have you, and changing this to must not will stop that discussion, then I promise to hold my nose and change the one word. But I really don't think it accomplishes anything. And I think that if we do start opening this up, we really ought to look at some other issues with it and think about mentioning eTurn and other things, and I would prefer not to go there. That's speaking mostly personally, but also as a somewhat lazy editor.
Thank you. And Pete, can I volunteer to make your comment on that? Add yourself to it. Okay. Well, okay. Sorry. I with my chair's power, I'm letting you. Sorry.
My comment in the chat room was simply, I think must not unless is probably more correct than should not unless, because I can't think of any other exceptions to don't use turn, right? You really shouldn't use turn unless you can authenticate, and there are really no other exceptions. So should not is, there might be exceptions if you're, if you have certain reasons to do so.
But I think all the exceptions are about how you authenticate. You
Right.
have to authenticate.
You have
It's
to
just
authenticate
how you
somehow,
authenticate.
and
Right.
authenticating may be I'm on a private network and I know the guy next to me, and but I don't think I think John's right. It doesn't make a huge difference one way or the other. And if John is willing to hold his nose and changing the should to a must will make it all go away, I'm willing to hold my nose too.
Okay. John?
Yeah, I'm basically going to agree, except I always read should not exactly to mean must not accept. It like must not means never ever do it, and should not means almost never do it, and should not always needs to be followed by like, okay, and when can you do it? And by golly, there it is. So, and I'm trying to put this politely, but I think we've gotten a lot of comments from people who perhaps do not understand SMTP quite as well as their strong opinions justify, and just leave it alone. It's fine.
Okay. Luckily Murray is in the queue. If we are going to leave it as should not, he has to relay this comment to the ISG.
Okay.
Sorry, if you want to say more, do say more.
I just wanted to, please don't throw eggs, but we did talk about just deleting turn, right? Like, does anybody actually do this? One of the things when we go up the standards track is
Ah.
delete stuff nobody's using. And
Well, this is the section saying it's obsolete. And this is explaining why it's obsolete. I think it's useful explanation why it's deleted.
this is what we have thrown away.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes. On the other hand, some people on the
Here's a
mailing
complete
list,
description of what we've thrown away.
yeah. And I cannot claim how credible the comments were, but some of the comments on the mailing list were, yeah, we kind of use that in some cases. So like, but they use it when it's authenticated. So, all right. So what I'm hearing is we'll try to leave it as is. And if it comes up in ISG review, Murray will fight on our behalf. And if it's a really, really big sticking point, then we'll just change should not to must not. And I think we're not going to lose sleep over it. Is this fair comment? Multiple thumbs up. Excellent. Okay. Moving on.
Murray, sorry, Alexi.
Yeah. Sorry, John. Yes, please.
Quick response to Murray, which is that there really are some use cases in use. They are marginal, they're obscure, and at the edges of the network. Trying to enumerate them would be a serious waste of time. But I note that one of the comments on the list about a use was actually from Paul, who said that although I've got a clear alternative, if it goes away, I use this. And what I and a few others have been very concerned about is those marginal edge of network cases where keeping a connection up for a long time is difficult and setting up new connections is difficult or sensitive. And the most obvious example is that if you are dependent on a moving satellite with a short window, then having that satellite transmit everything it has buffered to a terrestrial server and then say turn and have the terrestrial server send everything to it is more efficient than closing the connection and waiting for everybody to figure out that it's okay and restarting the connection. And that's the use case. And that's a variation of the use case since the 1980s. But I don't want to pull this out and I don't want to see this go away. Again, should not unless, must not unless, quibbles I might have about whether or not there might be exception cases other than the authentication, and I have them. I don't want to mess with this text about that stuff.
Then let me just be clear. I'll defend whichever thing you pick. I can work this out.
Okay. Well, I like that. Please put this in the notes. Yeah. Okay. Right. This is kind of another one of security related things, but it had a specific proposal. So I think this section title is slightly more obscure. Yeah, so it's not entirely clear. It's talking about authentication. Personally, I'm fine with your proposal, John. For the text or text.
At the risk of defending the drums working group, the ambiguity was a little bit intentional because when we decided to mention start TLS, S-MINE and PGP, that drags in the potential for encryption as well as authentication. Although most of the paragraph talks about authentication. Having said that, I certainly don't mind changing the title. And the question about inherently is whether we need to explain that, because to a certain extent, it's all tied up with this hop by hop problem. Not entirely, but somewhat to some degree. The only place where I draw the line relative to Donald's comment comes back to the comments about the AS and Start TLS, which I really do not want to get in the business of recommending particular extensions or add-ons or auxiliary protocols here if we can avoid it, with the emphasis on specific.
Yeah, I suggest you just propose a sentence tweak as you suggest, and possibly change the section title. That sounds sensible, and we can check in the next revision.
Okay.
Do people have comments? Any objections? Some people couldn't care less, but you know, I'm not going to name names.
I'll name my own.
Okay. Before you fall asleep, a few more things just to double check. This is actually showing the text that is already changed in the document. It's a clarification if, okay. Okay, some thumbs up. Oh no, okay, what?
The first sentence in the new thing says SMTP session. The next one says mail session. Which is it?
No, SMTP session, also called mail session.
Oh, often called. Sorry.
Yes. Long week, right? Okay. Oh, lucky escape. No change from area director. Carry on. Okay. Another one. I think that was kind of not super attentive reading, you know, of the text. Mail must not be sent. Mail was ambiguous in the sense. Does it mean mail in general or mail command? It meant mail command, so it's clarified. Done.
The original of that was much more clear because it said mail or send or summel or whatever
Right.
must not be sent. and when we deleted the other ones, I should have straightened this out. So now we've got it straightened out.
That's okay. Yeah. Sounds good. Yes?
I only vaguely remember the state machine, but I thought that sending mail terminated the current mail transaction. Please, somebody shout at me that I'm wrong.
I couldn't hear that. Could somebody summarize or repeat?
I thought that sending the mail command would terminate the current mail transaction.
Yes, I think what this is saying is if you already started a transaction, don't try to terminate it by saying another mail from. So it is kind of a, you know, yes, on one hand it terminates it, but this text saying don't do this.
I'm not looking at the state machine graph, but I'm looking at 3.3 of 5321. The transaction starts with a mail command that gives the sender identification. In general, the mail command may be sent only when no transaction is in progress. So you'd have to kill the first one before you send the second one.
Yes. Yeah, so, okay, so people happy with this? I mean, this is a bit, basically, yes, mail terminate an existing transaction, but don't do it. Just only do it at the beginning. So, all right. Okay, before you all fall asleep, section called verify normal response, talk about verify and expand. So my suggestion is to update the section title to mention both, because if for some reason you decide to search for expand and all related text, you will find it in the table of content. I'm hearing some sure fine from Pete and Murray and Ken and okay. No, John, you okay with this, right? John Clemson. Okay, thank you.
Not wild about it, but certainly okay.
Okay. With this one, we got a little bit into discussion of, as John Clancy said, this was a weak shoot and there is no really way of expressing it. So suggestion not to mess with the text, it seems to be clear enough. Is that okay with people?
I have suggested to Donald off list that if he thinks this is a problem, he should drop a note to the RPC. Because the RC editor wants to change this, I was struck.
Okay. Right.
Terminated by if. Might be some copy pasta that needs tidying.
Huh?
The
Yeah,
SMTP command, current text, the SMTP commands define the mail transfer or the mail system function requested by the user. SMTP commands are character strings terminated by, and then it stops. The commands themselves are alphabetic characters terminated by if parameters follow and otherwise.
Oh, I think I've already fixed that in the revised document, but
Okay, thanks. Barry?
Yeah, this is Barry Liba. I have some sympathy. I don't care a lot about it, but I have some sympathy for the idea that we should not put BCP 26 BCP 14 keywords in parentheses inside parentheses. But if John would rather not take the parentheses out, I'm certainly not going to object. But I kind of lean toward taking the parentheses out.
If John were left with a choice between taking the parentheses out and lowercasing that short, he might pick the latter.
And if John did that, Barry would be equally happy. So
I like active indifference of various people. I know this is like, I mean, late stages of the document. We're really going with nitpicking. So, but right.
I would say we're all sort of, in general, mostly agreement and kind of punchy anyway. So
okay. Right. So next. So there is a section. So there are two sections in the document. One lists response codes in numeric order, and the other one by functional groups. There was a formatting error, and the groups were not clear. I think John fixed the error, so they're grouped. I personally looked at the list, and I was trying, the question was, can we add some heading for explain the groups? And I looked at it very quickly. For some grouping, I couldn't quite come up with the text. I mean, they were also mostly obvious. Some of them were less obvious, but I think the grouping was okay-ish. So I kind of like, yeah. John?
Yeah, my only big concern is as I recreated those groups, and as you said, this was originally just really a formatting error from the XML to RFC version 1 to version whatever we're running now conversion. But I'm not certain that the groups are now correct. And if anybody would like to take a look at that, I'd appreciate it. As far as adding subheadings is concerned, I I suggest that anybody who thinks that's important should take the subheadings up and review them carefully with the esteemed author of this section.
Okay, if you phrase it like
This is
this,
a 21 text, and that involves resurrecting Pastel, but that's a separate problem.
if you really want to go this way, I can probably suggest moving some codes around because some of them were not entirely logical together. But at the end of the day, I kind of decided it was kind of advisory thing, so it makes no huge difference. So I might send you some proposals. If you disagree and leave it as is, that's fine. If you agree and want to change, that's fine too. Anybody else wants to volunteer to look at this? I see a forest of hands. I'm lying.
Works for me. I'll be happy to look at your suggestions.
Okay.
But,
Okay.
but and I think this is consistent with what you just said. I'm very reluctant to make changes here unless they're clear.
Yeah, but again, yeah. As
And
long as this,
and I think you have better things to do with your time than try to make those suggestions, but that's a separate problem.
okay, well, I wouldn't say that you challenged me to find something wrong with the section, but I kind of like wasn't certain about a few things. So I'll send you a quick email if it changes. But the main thing is the two sections have to agree, as in they have to list all the same codes just in different order. As long as there is no code missing, fine, basically. So yeah, I'm not going to lose sleep over this anyway.
Yeah, I have checked that.
Okay. We have 4 minutes. Do you want to do this now, or we can do it tomorrow?
The more of this garbage we can get out of the way now, the more we can concentrate on real things tomorrow.
So basically, there is one sentence saying that basically everywhere we say hello, we also mean hello. And then in some cases, there are text says hello or hello. And some other cases, it only says hello. In some of these subcases, it's clear that it only applies to extensibility mechanism. In other cases, it's not super clear.
To be clear, Donald's suggestion was to mention parentheses or hello every time hello appeared, which would have included those places where hello is clearly not appropriate. I should say the first version of the suggestion.
Yeah, okay.
I'll try to be not ambivalent this time. This one just seems like a pain in the butt editorial thing, but probably one that you should do just to make sure that it doesn't, that there's no place where it's ambiguous what's going on. And if that means just do a search for each of the ELOs and make sure that the ones that really apply to both, you just put in the parentheses. That seems not horribly painful. We've all done as editors one of these tasks, and make sure that the ones that are just about ELO, don't have anything following them. But it is purely editorial fluff, but probably worth doing.
Okay, so I put myself in the queue. I'm not going to go there. All right. As a participant, I check some text. What I think, even though it's kind of seems like purely editorial, it will improve the cases where there is a list of command resetting transaction. So actually saying hello there explicitly potentially is a interop issue. So clarifying that hello also resets current transaction.
You might be able to say near the top someplace, everything we say about ELO also applies to HELO unless we say otherwise.
It already does that, but there was still this
It already
comment.
does that.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Partial response to Pete. I would consider this editorial fluff, and I would have immediately made the change on Donald's suggestion, and we wouldn't be having this conversation, except for one minor problem, which is that Donald made the trip through the document, partly at my request, and identified the places where it needed to be changed. And Alexei made a trip through the document and identified the places where it needed to be changed. And I made a very fast and superficial pass through the document and to find the places where it needed to be changed. And we ended up with 3 different lists. And that to me says this is not editorial fluff, but it's potentially something we could get wrong in the process of fixing it. And that makes a very strong argument for the paragraph which Murray suggests, which is already there, and then just leaving well enough alone. If the working group wants me to change this, I will do so, but I want a list of where I'm going to make the changes, and working group consensus that's the right list.
I won't object to that outcome if that's what we do. Yeah, if we're going to do it, let's make sure we get it right. And if we're worried about getting it wrong, let's not do it. But if the latter is the decision,
Well,
good enough for me.
It's a question of doing nothing or somebody spending 10 minutes and verifying that.
If we ended up different lists, that means this is a definitely technical issue, and it's something that should be clarified, because that means that people have a different opinions, where it should apply and where it shouldn't be applied. So I think we should add it and say that it's. And actually, we could probably even remove the sentence saying that where we say hello, we use same applies. We say that they are always mentioned if we apply to both, and if it's only mentioned once, then that's only because I mean, yeah. And then we might start arguing which places we actually need to be, but that would be separate tickets for those things that we don't agree on, and see whether we actually. Okay. I mean, if we can't here know which one of those applies, how does the implementer know?
That's really not the problem. The problem is that, excuse me, every place where hello cannot be used is either completely clear and obvious from context because you're talking about extensions, or there's already specific language there which says, don't use that. So under the best of circumstances, given the text which says you can use hello unless we say, anytime you can use hello unless it says differently, we're saying that that's insufficient, which is okay. But that brings us back to Pete's initial comment, which is this ought to be window dressing or fluff or whatever appropriate words one is using. The difficulty is that if you start going through looking for particular instances, you get into cases where it is not completely obvious until you read the rest of the paragraph that it's talking about specific use with the extension mechanism. The other problem here, which we should keep in mind, and I am very surprised it didn't come up loudly on last call, given the other things which did, is why at this stage, 20, 25 years later, we are not just deprecating hello entirely and saying anybody who uses that is obsolete and retarded and legacy, and you shouldn't, and we're taking it out of the document. Now, I don't believe we should do that. But really, if we have to split hairs about this, we need to have that discussion.
Can I say no as a chair?
Can I say?
Or at least not tie them two together. Okay. can I please have 2 volunteers to go through this text and see where hello applies? Just, I'm trying to, Arndt and Pete volunteer. So, and if we cannot come up with the
So Arndt
Single
and I
list.
are going to go through it carefully. If Arndt and I can't come up with the same list blindly without consulting with each other, that means we should probably leave it the hell alone. And if we can come up with a good list, consulting with each
I
other,
think I kind of buy a little bit into Tero's argument that
that if we can't
agree
come up with
that
the
it's
same
not
list,
clear, that something is wrong.
we have to decide which one is correct.
Yes.
Okay. Arndt and I will give it a go.
I am fine with that as long as at the end I get unambiguous instructions.
And maybe when you come up with the list, it's like either I look at mine and says, "Oh yeah, I missed that," or yes, mine is not correct, or you come up with the same list, and then it's like, oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry, this took a little bit longer than anticipated, and we are 6 minutes over time. But thank you for coming today, and we'll see hopefully most of you tomorrow. All right.
Assuming the notes give me an adequate idea about what to do, I will have either alternate text for some of these things or a new draft of the document with the alternate text options listed up well before the meeting tomorrow.
If you can, great. But if not, it's okay. All right.
I'd rather have this finished by the end of the week if we can do that.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
I see. Yeah. There you go. Yeah, be sure to talk to me after. That's right. Bring some cameras down across the river. Fire it up in the room with an empty desk, and we'll all be back on in 5 minutes. Big enough Zoom, we could probably get to the ferry. Oh. All right.
Or before or instead of. I am open to suggestions.